Okay, I did. And then
Just go back to full screen.
Where's the option for that?
Just hover over the video,
yeah, the bottom.
the bottom right.
No, no, the
Oh, oh, okay, this one.
go. Because we have to go.
All right, so let's get started. So today I'm Karan Jariwala, member of the Google Developer Student Club, and I'm here to present a short session about how to create a chatbot using Google DialogFlow, which is one of the services provided by Google Cloud. So let's get started. And here is the agenda for the workshop. So yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. And yep. So just to give you a brief teaser, you can scan this QR code or go open this link. You'll be taken to a page which would look similar to, one second. So you'll be taken to a page which is very similar to this. And here is the chatbot. So yeah, so you can interact with it and just to get a feel of how it works or interacts. So let's say, yeah, so the chatbot which is developed here, that is actually able to tell you jokes and give you motivational quotes. So let's say, give me a joke. So it will give you some kind of joke in response, or please motivate me. So again, it gives you a motivational quote. So this is a brief teaser of the workshop. And yeah, if you want, like here is the QR code, you can scan it. Should we go ahead? Okay. So yeah, so the basic technology or concept which is used for building a chatbot is natural language processing, which is a subfield of computer science that deals with how humans speak and how the language is perceived by the computers. And so there are a few known problems with NLP, like let's say this thing which is called language modeling. So uh, you can think of it like, let's say you are uttering a phrase which is called recognized speech. But if the model is not trained very well, then it could also perceive that recognized speech is as actually rec a nice speech. So it can go either way. If the model is not trained accordingly to various accents or like ways of speech, so in that case, like it can be a little troublesome to actually get the proper output. And one of the latest developments, I think all of you would be familiar, is GPT-3, which is developed by OpenAI. So all of these are very large language models which can understand what you are saying and based on that identify what you are trying to get the chatbot to do and give you the proper outputs. Then the other part is speech recognition. So similar to the previous example, like instead of a chatbot, you can also make it a voice conversational bot. Like you have Siri in your phones or Hey Google or Alexa. So what it does is basically it converts your audio speech into text, and then it basically processes the text and gives you the output after doing some further processing and queries on the text. So that is one of the research areas, you can say. Then machine translation, again, like whatever input you give in one particular language, then it needs to be properly translate it to other language while preserving the meaning and context. So machine translation is another area, and question answering. So as you all know, like most of the databases are mostly text-based databases. Not a lot of information is actually stored in and retrieved in the form of audio. So uh, in order to kind of search through these vast amount of data, you need to have information retrieval systems which can extract data in a good amount of response time and give you the outputs. So question answering like Google Assistant or Siri or other smart assistants can definitely help you with that. So these are some of the areas in which natural language processing is used. And yep. So coming over to the focus of this workshop, which is the chatbot. So a chatbot is a software that simulates human-like conversations via text messages on chat. And its key task is to help users by providing answers to the questions. So for example, as you can see over here, this is the chatbot, and it is basically help assistant for a particular website. Let's say a pizza ordering website. So it is asking that, okay, what do you want to do? Check availability, or how long does the delivery take, or other issues. So the user selects how long does the delivery take. So in order to give the user a proper answer, it will need more information than just the how text that how long does the delivery take. So the chatbot will ask the user for the address. So on providing the address, the delivery will take 2 to 3 days. So it turns out it was not a pizza delivery site, but maybe something like Amazon. So yeah, any questions till now? Okay. So yeah, so the tool which we will be using today is DialogFlow, which is a natural language understanding platform developed by Google, and it can analyze the input from whatever you give to the DialogFlow, and it can give you a response based on the inputs you provided. So the fundamental unit of any chatbot is considered an intent. So intent is basically what the user wants the chatbot to do. So over here, like as you can see in the screenshot, the user says joke. So the chatbot should be smart enough to detect that what the user's intention is. So in this case, it has been trained that okay, like I'll get to it in a while. So whatever the user wants the chatbot to do is basically an intent, and there are particular intents for which the chatbot is trained. So if so, this particular chatbot which I displayed a few minutes ago, that was trained to deliver jokes and motivational quotes. So these are the two intents for this chatbot. Other than that, there are default welcome intents or good. Uh, yeah, if it's a pizza ordering app, then they can also have a pizza ordering intent. Like there could be endless possibilities for an like about the intents you can make, and if anything falls out of the scope of the chatbot, then there's a default or fallback intent, which is the default response that chatbot can give in case it doesn't understand the user's input, or even if it does, but it does not know how to answer it. So in that case, default intent is basically returned back to the user, a default response message. So yeah, so one second. Yeah, so as the whatever the user says is the user expression, and Dialogflow compares the expression to the training phrases. So whatever you see over here, it can be considered as a training phrase that okay, whenever the user says joke, it needs to map that whatever the user has said that maps to the joke intent. And Dialogflow uses two algorithms to match intents, which are rule-based grammar matching and ML matching. So yeah, so once the intent is yeah, so as I carrying forward the previous example, that a chatbot is trained across multiple intents, and then when the final at the end, the task of the chatbot is to map the user's expression or the utterances which the user gave to a particular intent. So the matching of the intent happens on the basis of probabilities, and at the end, each intent is mapped to a particular score, which is called the confidence score, which is the probability that okay, the intent give me a few jokes match to the get jokes intent. So in this case, the score would be something 0.8, 0.9, or 1 exactly. So when the intent matching system is perfectly certain that okay, whatever the user has said is matching to this intent, so at that time it would get a completely certain probability score of 1. While if it is not sure the user has said, then it will give a score of 0. So if the highest scoring intent is matched, then yeah, so there is also this threshold property which you can set. So like I think the general uh, heuristic is that 0.75 or 0.8. Like if the intent matching is more than 75% or 80%, then in those cases you can consider that the intent has been matched. Otherwise, it is not a match. So if the yeah, so if the intent is matched with a number greater than the threshold, then it is returned as a match. And if no intents are matched, then the default or fallback intent, which I mentioned a few minutes ago, that would be returned. Or if there are no fallback intents configured, then you won't get any response. Any questions till now? Okay, so are you guys ready for some hands-on? If so, then you can like open this link in your browser and we can get ahead with the workshop. By a show of hands, who wants to do a hands-on? Or just a brief overview, the thing is that I already configured all these things. I can show you how I did it. Would that work? Okay. So in this case, yeah. So a few things. So this entire setup works in the DialogFlow, which is a service provided by Google. So once you sign up on Google Cloud and access the DialogFlow service, you would be taken to a page which would look similar to this. So over here, I have already created the particular chatbot for jokes. And yeah, so as I was saying previously, so this is the welcome intent. So these are the training phrases which the model has been provided with. Let's start. What can I try? How are you? Hi, hello. So whenever the user says something like this, so at that time, the default welcome intent is matched. And once that intent is matched, just the matching does not give or serve any purpose. After the intent is matched, it needs to provide certain responses. So in this case, we are providing responses like this. So basically over here, this is just a brief introduction, and then these are the capabilities of this particular chatbot. Like it can give you jokes or motivational quotes. And yeah, so in order to trigger any of the intents, you can write quotes or jokes or something like that. So a good idea when designing a chatbot is that like once the user says hi or hello, you should give the user an experience that okay, now I am listening to you. What do you want? Like this, these are the things that I can do. Now it's on you to decide what you want me to do. So similarly, over here, the chatbot is introducing itself and it is saying that it can speak or respond with jokes and quotes. So, what the user wants to do, it can be again the conversation, the responsibility of continuing the conversation is again with the user. And also, if you remember from this slide, these are also a good enough way to engage the user so that the user don't have to type anything. So providing these buttons is also a good way of kind of showcasing the capabilities of the chatbots. These are particularly useful in the cases when it's very natural for the user to make a typing mistake. Like let's say if the user wants to write Amazon and instead of Amazon it writes AMZON, then instead of instead of writing decoding that okay AMZON is not a valid word, if the user has been provided with any of these buttons that okay Amazon, Microsoft, Google, something like that, then there's a very low probability of the user making a mistake, and it also leads to a good user experience as well. So yeah, but again, doing these things take a lot of efforts. So for the initial level, we can just go ahead with text-based responses. So yeah, coming back here. So these are the uh, responses when the welcome intent is matched. So let's give it a shot. Yeah. So over here, one more thing that I would like to point your attention to is that these are the responses which I have configured. Like uh, basically, these are the hard-coded responses. If you want the user to like, this is a very narrow-scoped chatbot, I would say that like it has a very limited scope of capabilities, and other than that it is not actually hitting some other systems to kind of fetch information from their end. So I'll get to it in the later part of the presentation, but the point I'm trying to make is that these are some hard-coded responses, and if you want the to kind of supercharge your chatbot, then in that case you can also configure it to hit another backend API so that it can fetch responses from there. But for the time being, this is a very simple enough demo. So for that, we are just hard coding the responses, and then the agent uh, randomly picks any one of these responses and returns back to the user. So in this case, it was the response number 2, but let's say, hey, okay, it's again response number 2. Yeah. So in this case, it gave the response number 4. So this was the welcome intent. Then we have the get jokes intent. Again, over here, I have given a few training phrases for the model that, okay, joke of the day, random joke, funny jokes, more jokes, something like this. So whenever so whenever the model receives the input from the user, uh, it will try to match the user's response to any of these given responses, text utterances, and match it to the get jokes intent. If it is successfully able to match these, then it will give a response from any of these pre-configured jokes. So again, these all of these jokes are hard coded into the model right now. But if you want, you can definitely hit some external API which gives you jokes, and response from that can be passed, and further processing can be done and returned back to the user. So similarly, the get quotes intent is configured to consider these particular phrases as training phrases, and these are the responses which the user could get. And let's say you tell it that, okay, solve bubble sort for me. So in this case, the the chatbot has not been trained to respond or understand what bubble sort or algorithm or any of these words are. So in this case, it gives you a default response as I did not get that. And as you can see over here, it is configured to the intent which is identified as the default fallback intent. So if we look inside this, you can see that these are some of the pre-configured responses. So this is basically the chatbot telling the user that it is not programmed to answer something like this. Yeah, and then there are a few additional things called entities. So for example, like let's say you are developing a chatbot for a pizza ordering for Domino's, for example. So in that case, um, like how do you usually order a pizza? How do you order a pizza? Toppings. What else would you ask for? Yeah. So what you are getting to is that just getting the name of a pizza is not enough. You need more customizations for that. The type of pizza base, the type of toppings, the type of cheese, all those things are required in order to make up a certain type of pizza. So in that case, uh, so you would use something called entities. So entities are complex kind of structures. Are you familiar with hash maps by any chance? Yeah. So hash maps have key and value, right? So similarly, entities can be considered analogous to hash maps. So there are a certain number of keys which are configured that, okay, once all these keys have their respective values, you can further proceed that, okay, like for the pizza example, we can say that if the base is selected, then the toppings are selected, the cheese is selected. Then once all these things are provided as inputs, you can go ahead and make a pizza. So entities are similar things that it will ask for more inputs. Unless it gets all the inputs, it won't proceed further to process the user's request. So that is one thing. And other than that, for fulfillment. So yeah, this was a thing I was referring to. So in our case, the responses of the jokes have been kind of pre-configured or hard coded, as I said. But instead of that, if you want, you can, like I was just trying this out, that I was hitting this API and I was getting the response from it. And once I get the response, I can kind of show the response to the user back. So if you want to do certain complex tasks, even for the pizza example, like once the user has given all the inputs that, okay, he wants some flat bread and then pepperoni toppings and mozzarella cheese. So after all that information is accepted by the chatbot, this information needs to be passed somewhere, right? Only then the pizza would be made. So in order to do all that, the chatbot will kind of make a request to create request basically to the API that, okay, all these inputs have been collected. Now it's time for you to create the order number for it. And once that order number is created, the information is passed to the people in the kitchen that, okay, you make this particular pizza. So once that is done, the user is kind of given back the order number that, okay, since you asked for this kind of pizza, this is your order number. And then the user can use that order number for further tracking. Any questions so far? You had any question? Okay, cool. So yeah, so in order to kind of send the responses back and forth between the backend and the chatbot, you can configure the webhook URLs over here, and like most of the URLs would be secured and would need authentication password. So all of those things can be configured over here, and you can enable secure transactions between the backend and the front end. And then there's this feature called integrations. So over here, you can basically, once your chatbot is ready, you can integrate it on any of these systems. Basically, if you want to use your chatbot in Slack, or let's say on Facebook Messenger or Telegram, then you can basically have this as the backend system and the chat interface which you saw on the site here. So this will be the front end where the chatbot is kind of answering the questions. So other than that, yeah, otherwise, if you don't want to kind of get into the nitty-gritty details of making a chatbot, you can use some of these pre-configured so that you can get the hang of it, that how things are configured, how a chatbot is created, basically. And other than that, what's knowledge? Okay. So it's a beta feature, need to enable it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the creation of chatbot. And yeah, so as I said previously, like you can connect it with a backend API for further processing. Like in the pizza example, if you want to create a weather chatbot, then you can hit the weather service API. And similar to how I have integrated it on my page, you can integrate it on your website. And yeah, so this was just for the, if you wanted to kind of carry on with the hands-on. So these were the jokes and quotes. And yeah, if you have any further questions, then you can definitely refer to the DialogFlow documentation. And yeah, if you want to play with the particular chatbot that I created, here is a GitHub link for it. Yep, thank you. And any further questions? Cool.
Between the street.
Yeah, just
So we have to
you can just
stream
end the
that.
podcast.
Yeah. And then I podcast at the